Askreddit. Redditors. What's your most crazy RPG horror story? I am a DM. I actually prefer to DM instead of play, and I put a lot of effort into the games that I run. My highest priority is to make the game as immersive as I can. I use environmental maps, I describe each monster action and the effects of player actions, I take notes and write summaries, I use Roll20 for dynamic lighting, etc. So there was this player, I'll call him Shad. He was in an unusual time zone which made it difficult to play with him. He signed up for one of my regular games and made characters but was never able to actually play. Me being a nice guy, I reached out and told him to pick a time that works for him, and that I would do my best to accommodate. We picked a time and day a week out, and I wrote a one-shot for him. Fast forward to Dave. He tells me his schedule changed about an hour before we were going to start. He says he'll be free in 3 hours. Kind of a D move, but fine. I plan to play anyway, I can start a bit later. We just probably wouldn't be able to finish. We start the game and go over player etiquette. Don't talk over other people and don't metagame. We begin. He refuses to roleplay in character. He frequently metagames and says stuff like that monster can't attack me, even though yes, it totally can. You're in plain view. But even though this rattled me a bit, it's not that bad. About an hour into the session, he tried to wild shape and had no idea how the ability worked. He wanted to turn into a CR5 fiend, because he was a character level 5 druid. Clearly this is not how the ability works, so I gave him a quick overview and sent him a list of usual stuff druids turn into. He got real indignant when I asked him to read how his character abilities work. He kept saying, I haven't played this character before, you can't expect me to know how it works. But let's be real. All of us learn D&D by reading how the abilities work. Why can't he? It's a pretty basic requirement of play. Learn what your character does. Annoying, but not yet a deal breaker. Then he started disconnecting. Every 5 to 10 minutes, he would disconnect from the game and miss what we were saying. Whenever he reconnected, he would loudly announce that he was back, give some reason for why he was disconnecting, and ask what he missed. He would loudly announce this regardless of whether anyone else was speaking. When he reconnected, he would just shout over whatever else was going on. I told him it was messing up the game and that he should be quiet and listen. He lost his shit and started yelling at me for keeping him from having fun. So we finished the game without him. Once he was gone, everything progressed a lot faster and we finished the adventure. Background info: this was a game among friends run through Roll20. Most of us still game together weekly, save for one. The titular edgelord whom this post was made in honor of. If you're reading this, you know who you are. The cast. Me, KR13G Krieg, a Warforged Forge cleric with 1 barbarian level, somehow became party face and united the people of the Sword Coast against Tiamat in spite of edgelord's efforts. Brutus, Goliath barbarian, great guy, friendly character who always sought to bring honor to his clan. Zorn, lizardfolk death cleric whose character suffered from brain damage and role-played it very well. Skull, human ghost slayer bloodhunter. Typical edgelord character that hated the party that for reasons unknown still worked with the party. Was a good friend of mine before this campaign started, and for better or worse we don't talk anymore. GM, nicest guy and great person to run a game. Took all of Skull's interaction with the party in stride and kept things from getting too out of hand. There were others in the campaign but their character names escape me as this happened months ago and the rest of us are all in a new campaign. Spoilers ahead for Tyranny of Dragons. We run through the adventure as normal, though when we get to the part where the Harpers and Order of the Gauntlet each give us our task and ask if any of the party would like to join, most of the party join the Harpers, with a few joining the Order of the Gauntlet. Skull, however, decided to call the rest of the party idiots, and other various insults for relying on others and showing weakness. And trusting someone who is obviously so corrupt in his own words. Cut to the part where you visit an elf settlement and the mayor runs away into the forest. We all learn he colluded with the cult of Tiamat and sold out his people, resulting in a ton of death on his side. AKA corruption. We find the elf dude in the forest and are given the choice to either kill him, spare him and let him go, or to turn him in. The majority of us believe it is best we turn him in for his crimes, but Skull basically halts us and forces the party to spare him by calling everyone idiots and threatening us in character. You know, the guy who just insulted us for helping people he thinks might be corrupt just forced us all to help someone who actually was corrupt. After all this happens, we return to the town and do some RP. He meets up with some other character from his backstory and edgelord turns into a bad DeviantArt fanfic love story author. Just oozing cringe and once again, halting the game. Turns out the NPC his character totally doesn't have a crush on was wounded by a dragon and asks us to kill said dragon. We venture out to its lair and the fight is ended in 3 or so rounds from a lucky crit using 2 of our 3 dragon slaying arrows that we received earlier that were intended to be saved for the big fight. Brutus asks why he had used almost all of our dragon slaying arrows to kill one dragon when we all could have taken him on together. His response? "I don't have to take this from you, idiotic meathead." And the session ends there. Things go smoothly from there, up until we meet with the metallic dragons and are supposed to ask for their aid. They ask us one question: tell us your names so we may know who we speak with. As Skull has never divulged his true name to us, things get rough. Up until he asks them if they can speak Primordial, which has ever come up before that his character could speak that language. And to keep to his edgelord alias, forced us all to cover our ears so he could say his name in another language. And this was the start of negotiations. Bickering ensues on if we should even ask them for aid, because one of the metallic dragons, I don't remember which, thinks all humans are lowly creatures and would attack indiscriminately just to destroy the cult of Tiamat. Rather than try to persuade, as most of us, including Skull, had proficiency in persuasion, he instead thought we should leave or kill the dragons because, and I quote, "they're all too corrupt to care about human lives, they won't help us, and if we ask them to, we're all evil. You know, metallic dragons, being evil and all that." After my character tells Skull to pull your head out of your ass and look at what we're dealing with here. You fight us at every turn and call us corrupt for seeking aid in a fight that threatens us all. Would you kindly work with us for once or don't work with us at all? His response? He says his character gives all for us the middle finger and leaves. Skull flew away his wyvern that he strong-armed the GM into letting him immediately tame after a single-handle animal check to calm it down because us entering the stable spooked it. He wouldn't stop begging and asking for I think almost 20 minutes, and when your sessions are usually 2.5 hours long, that's a lot of time to halt all progress. None of us asked him to stop because whenever we tried in the past, he would verbally abuse us in character and threaten to attack us on some occasions. With his character gone for the time, we successfully persuade the dragons to aid the people of the Sword Coast, on the condition that we unite the Council of Waterdeep to fight united. They say they will help us, but only if all of the party are in agreement. Upon saying this, one of the dragons goes to fetch the edgelord and forces him to come back to apologize to the party. His character gives a half-hearted apology and goes right back to verbally abusing our characters next session. After this, we're fighting some cultists in a dungeon, and once we get to the boss room, due to some unlucky crit fails, his character storms out of the room for the rest of the fight. And when my character asks where he went, he responds by saying that's none of your business, dumb robot. Calling my character a dumb robot, or a machine was a favorite of his, as he knew my character's goal was to prove that despite being a construct of magic, he was still human in his heart. The discussion ended there, and things went on normally for now. Fast forward for when we travel to Ty and meet with the Red Wizards who hate the cult as much as we do. We all know they are an evil organization, and most of us agree to put aside our differences and work together in the meantime, as the destruction of the realm is a bad thing for everybody. And necromancy on the other side of the continent is a much smaller thing to worry about in the short term. Can you all guess who was the only one who opposed us? If you guessed Skull, you'd be right. His character refused to even step foot into their stronghold to talk with them and threatened to kill the messenger who brought us there. Cue some more arguing and verbal abuse from his character, and we leave him behind to negotiate. After negotiations finish, the Red Wizards teleport the party back to Waterdeep. But when we arrive, we notice Skull is missing. Most of the party thinks we should leave him and go fight since the big fight with the cultist today. I mistakenly thought I should be nice and try to bring him back to us in hopes he'll apologize for being an ass to all of us and start being nice, since this was by now, the final session. I asked the GM, can I use divine intervention to teleport Skull to us? He agrees and says I don't have to roll, but now I'm down a divine intervention and when he arrives, I say to Skull, it's good to have you back, but you owe me for this. He responds by saying I didn't need your help, Metal Man. And I owe you nothing. We get to the fight, and with what little golden time we had I had got magic items to resist as much of Tiamat's breath attacks as possible. Fire resist from Forged Domain, Poison resist from Warforged, Cold and Lightning resist from attuned magic items. This will become important later. After a brief, 15-minute long chat with Skull's totally not crush she's just a close friend, we can finally begin the fight. When Tiamat shows up, we're already a bit hurt, but Brutus and I are still in the triple digits for health. The party wizard is on death's door from some failed saves and the rest are a mixed bag of HP. For Tiamat's breath attacks, I found out they were all tied to different die rolls for which one would go off. It was just a matter of luck if she'd use acid breath or not, as that was the only one I couldn't resist. Party members fall left and right, and most of my actions are spent healing people who are dying while the other cleric, Zorn, heals them further, until he himself falls. The next turn comes around, and Tiamat chose the fire breath, which I luckily passed the dex save one with a fat +1, leaving me at 60 horsepower. Also luckily, a stray crit on my next turn wins us the fight. Oik, the guy playing Skull complains that the GM took things easy on us, and Tiamat was supposed to be harder. He claimed he read through it with a friend who wanted to run the module, but no one believed this. We all think he read it beforehand to metagame through it. But when the GM said I followed the book exactly, you guys just did really well on the diplomacy parts thanks to KR13G, so Tiamat got weakened. This response prompted the following exchange. Skull, it still should have been harder. KR13G took no damage. Me, I have magic items and traits giving me resistances to most of her damage types, and after all that, I'm still below half health. On top of that, you used a dragon slaying arrow almost every round to get insane damage. Skull, yeah, but you have to admit, GM still shouldn't have been so easy on us back there. Me, and this part I regretted at the time, but since then, not anymore. Hey, GM, I'd like to cast animate objects on Skull's weapons and mask. GM, okay, do it. For context, Skull's character wore a mask that he refused to take off or explain why he wore it, but constantly made sure we all knew he was wearing one. Saying things like, Skull just stares at you, you can't see his eyes through the mask, but you can tell he's glaring at you. Once he was disarmed and dismasked, we saw his regular human face, and in character, he starts yelling at me about how I abandoned my god and made him forsake his oath, and when my character dies I'll be sent to the 9 hells for taking his mask away, with some other insults at not just my character, but me as well. And he storms out of the room, finding his love interest NPC. The NPC tells Skull that during the fight she found the guy who kidnapped his sister and he's tied up in the Waterdeep dungeon awaiting him for judgment. He gets his sister back, and the plotline that could have been taken care of ages ago with the party that could have been used for some great character development and bonding was ignored because Skull stuck too hard to the edgy persona and insulted anyone who talked to him. After this, we all meet up, and Skull decides he has some things to say to all of the party. Skull, Brutus, you're just a dumb meathead and you didn't talk much or get in the way. And for that, I kinda liked you. Brutus, haha, yeah, Skull, Zorn, I don't have much to say, but you were somewhat decent with healing us. He went on like this for the entire party, and had an entire spec saved just for me. KR13G, you are not human, and you never will be. You're an insult to your faith and you are the worst person I've worked with in all my years. This went on for a good 10 minutes, where anytime someone would interject, they'd get shut down by him and insulted more. After this, he left the Discord call and has been ghosting around in my server since September. Though for the first few days, we caught him online and chatted, trying to ignore how awful he was in game with us, and he couldn't stop bragging about how cool his character was, and how he only didn't open up because he hated the party and didn't trust any of us. After that, myself and GM have run other games without him and everyone has been having a blast. Thanks for watching. Press like and subscribe button for more Reddit stories.